So I had this dream last night, really vivid, like the kind that sticks with you. I was in this huge library, but the shelves were not right. They were sort of melting upward, like reverse dripping. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense because in the dream logic, it always does. And then I was walking down one of the aisles and saw this book. Bright red, no title, just a single button on the cover. And actually, now that I think about it, the floor in that library was kind of like that cheap tile you see in gas stations. Which, speaking of gas stations, always smell like a mix of burnt coffee and tires, right? And then I started wondering if maybe the library had a gas station in it because suddenly there was this humming sound. And I turned around and boom, there's a hot dog roller just sitting between two bookshelves. No one was using it, but the hot dogs were all spinning in perfect sync, and one of them winked at me. So obviously I had to press the button on the red book, but before I could, this guy walks past wearing a full scuba suit, no water anywhere, just breathing heavy through the mask, and he's holding a bag of marshmallows. And that's when I realized the marshmallows were shaped like little traffic cones, and every time he took one out of the bag, a faint car horn went off somewhere in the distance. I tried to follow him, but the floor suddenly turned into those moving airport walkways. Except it was going the wrong way, so I was basically moonwalking in place. Then a pigeon landed right in front of me wearing a tiny gold crown, and it just stared, unblinking, before saying, "Your turn," and handing me a TV remote with only one button on it. I pressed it, and everything around me turned into a giant laundromat, but the washing machines were all full of soup. Not even the same kind of soup. One had tomato, another had chicken noodle, and one in the corner was just boiling milk for some reason. A man in a suit was standing there with a clipboard, nodding like this was perfectly normal, and marking something down every time a machine dinged. I asked him what was going on, and he just whispered inventory before turning into a coat rack. I picked up a stray spoon from the floor. Don't ask me why there was a spoon on the floor in a laundromat. And suddenly the entire place started flooding, but instead of water, it was pouring out hundreds of jelly beans. They piled up to my knees instantly, and every jelly bean I stepped on made a different animal noise. I tried to wade through them, but they just kept coming, and then the ceiling tiles started slowly lowering like the room was getting smaller. Just when I thought I was about to be crushed, the whole scene blinked like a TV turning off, and I was standing in a completely empty desert. No sand, no rocks, just this weird matte yellow floor stretching forever. Off in the distance, I could hear the faint sound of a microwave running.
I started walking toward it.
I was back in the library and standing in front of that same bright red book with the button, my finger hovering over it as if I'd never left.
But then the shelves around me began to ripple like waves in a sea of paper and ink, and I heard a voice somewhere between a whisper and a foghorn saying, "Every story ends where it begins, but no one remembers the middle." I blinked, and suddenly the library was upside down, the ceiling becoming the floor, and gravity deciding it was tired of following the rules. Books rained gently like autumn leaves, landing softly and opening to pages filled with nonsense poems about clocks that tick backward. I tried to walk, but my feet sank slightly into the floor as if it were made of pudding, wobbling with every step. At that moment, a talking cactus wearing aviator sunglasses rolled by on a skateboard and shouted, "Life's just a series of bad decisions wrapped in good intentions," before blasting off into a corridor that smelled faintly of burnt toast. I wasn't sure if I should chase it or just accept that it was the wisest thing I'd hear all day. Then just as I thought things couldn't get weirder, a cardboard box fell from above, bursting open to reveal a tiny marching band of frogs playing spoons and kazoo.
Led by an enthusiastic squirrel beating a drum made of recycled pizza boxes.
One frog leapt over to me and said solemnly, "The secret to happiness is believing you're the protagonist in someone else's fever dream."
Before I could respond, the squirrels started tap dancing, and the entire scene shifted again. Suddenly, I found myself sitting at a dinner table made entirely of waffles, and across from me was a man in a neon pink suit whose head was a spinning disco ball. He smiled and said, "Never trust a minuet that can't keep a beat, but always respect the one that makes you question reality." I tried to ask him what that meant, but before he could answer, the table turned into a carousel and I was spinning into the next scene. Everything blurred and reformed into a vast desert of glittering sand, where the sun hummed a jazzy tune and shadows danced independently. In the distance, I saw a door made of intertwined vines and mirrors with a sign that read, "Exit this dream at your own risk." As I stepped closer, I realized the sign was written in invisible ink, but I could read it perfectly in my mind, which felt like a message or maybe just a joke. I reached out to open the door, but before my hand touched the handle, even grazed the handle, boom! The whole place turned into a giant blender set to psychotic smoothie. Books started flying like angry pizzas. The floors morphed into bouncy castles, and I swear the ceiling began tap dancing while chanting, "Chaos is king." Suddenly, I lost my marbles, literally. My brain turned into a rubber chicken, and I started smashing every librarian-shaped balloon I could find. Then I grabbed a deck of Baladro cards and challenged the entire universe to a showdown.
The jokers giggled, the gloves slapped themselves, and for years I played losing chips faster than a squirrel on espresso.
I killed off imaginary friends, real friends, and a couple of suspiciously sneaky houseplants. Every round was crazier than the last. One time my cards turned into spaghetti and I had to eat my losses. But the real kicker, I made a video called Pain Latro, Exe, a tutorial on how to lose your mind and your chips simultaneously. At the end of the video, as the pixels warped into a dancing toaster, I leaned into the camera, grinned like a maniac, and whispered, "Sometimes the Joker is the only one laughing.